All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. If I could get your attention, we will get this show on the road. All right, good evening, and continue enjoying the food, and don't hesitate to get back up and get some more during any part of this presentation. Thank you all for coming. My name is Craig Sievertson. I currently serve as the president of the Board of Trustees of the Blue Mountain Community Foundation, and welcome to the 31st annual celebration of giving this evening for the Blue Mountain Community Foundation. The Community Foundation is in fact the community's foundation. It's not just any one city, it's not just any one person's, but it is the entire Blue Mountain area and our region's foundation. I'm pleased to report that the state of the Community Foundation is strong. 2014 and 15, which was for us last year because of our fiscal year, saw many improvements to the Foundation's governance and operations. The board continues to be committed to continuing the tradition of having an excellent board set forth by our founders, 4 of whom are here this evening. I'd like to recognize Art Griff, John Reese, Pete Peary, and Mary Lou Tilley. Thank you very much. I'm sure it's hard to imagine what it would have looked like 31 years later, 31 years ago. But here we sit today. So thank you all very much. You may notice people wearing a different color name tag. These are special people who are members of what we call our Summit Society. The Summit Society was created to recognize and thank the people who have included the foundation in their estate plan in some way and have agreed to share that information in the hopes that others will follow their leadership. Will everyone who is a Summit Society member stand up to be recognized, please? Thank you very much. And it's not always easy, I suppose, to stand up and be recognized for something that you have passion for because you simply just want to do it. It's the right thing. But thank you very much for doing that, and look forward to future Summit Society members as we progress. Two new board committees were created this past year, a Development Marketing Committee and a Farm Committee. The Development and Marketing Committee oversees the efforts to grow the endowment through gifts. It also ensures that as many people as possible know about the Community Foundation. The Development Committee is Shannon Bergevin, who's chair, Mindy Nelson, Sherilee Coffey, and Gary Ponte. We are privileged to receive outstanding bequests to establish endowment funds. That is one of the major components of how this Community Foundation works and was founded. The other new committee is the Farm Committee, which was created to help us administer gifts of agricultural land. This new initiative builds on the example of the Lamar Farm, which the Foundation has owned since 2000. The Lamar Farm produces wheat and scholarships, so it produces 2 things, and will continue to do so for many years to come. As you can see in this slide, part of the intention here to create a farm committee was centered in some interest in local folks being interested to donate their land. And one of the questions we got asked was, several people have asked us whether we should do the same for their land that we have done with the Lamar Farm, which was keep the family name and use it to produce scholarships forever, in perpetuity. And the board resoundingly said, yes, we should do that. Therefore, we've started the Farm Committee. You can see the members there. I happen to chair the Farm Committee, but as you can imagine, if any of you know me, I'm not a past farmer, although I worked on a farm. Maybe that's why I got chosen. But clearly we have some very trusted and experienced individuals who have been engaged in the agricultural industry and our community for many, many years in Mark Sherry, Harold Cochran, and Dave Gordon. One of the most important jobs of a board of a nonprofit organization is to ensure that there is clear leadership, that the mission, vision, and values of the organization are compelling, true, and clear. Last year, we created a new mission, a new vision, and confirmed a set of values to guide all of our work for board and staff. The mission is connecting people, charitable causes, and community needs. Our vision, improving quality of life for all in the Blue Mountain area through philanthropy. Our values, no coincidence that it's RISE, it's an acronym, right? Respect, integrity, stewardship, and engagement. Ethical and principled actions have always been a mainstay, but specific values are useful in specific situations. Asking ourselves whether a given action fits these values helps us think through some very specific times and situations. And we actually have on more than one occasion, whether it be a committee meeting, a board meeting, or amongst the staff, when we're scratching our head wondering, well, what should we do? This slide comes out, believe it or not. And we ask ourselves, are we rising? During today's program, you will hear from 5 people, and they will share their experiences with the Community Foundation. They represent different parts of our mission and services. We'll hear from owners of 2 donor-advised funds, Dr. Joseph and Donna Wujek and Jim Peterson. We'll also hear from James Payne, Executive Director of the Fort Walla Walla Museum, regarding an agency fund. Another speaker is Stan Leddington of the Health Center at Lincoln High School, who will speak from the perspective of a grant recipient. Finally, Jim Hayner, a member of the Investment Committee and someone very familiar with the Community Foundation, will speak about our investment performance in the past few years. I also wish to speak real briefly about my experience as a longtime board member. Hard to believe it's been 9 years since I was first on this board. And it comes to a close at the end of this year. I can truly say it has been an interesting, inspiring, and great experience. There are many projects and nonprofits in our region that have benefited from the Community Foundation, as well as individuals. The flexibility and diversity of our services serves our community well. Whether it's an endowment with an unlimited time horizon or a short-term fiscal sponsorship for a charitable project, like the replacement of the track at Garrison a few years ago, or the new pickleball courts at Pioneer Park, the Community Foundation has a unique role in helping our community. I intend to stay engaged with the Community Foundation and urge all of you, if asked to serve on a committee or the board, and if you have time, to seriously consider it. You will enjoy it and have a deep sense of satisfaction because you will see how we come together to solve problems and improve the quality of life in the Blue Mountain area. I wanted to real quickly ask our current trustees who are present today. I won't read them all off, they're in your program, but if you could please stand just so you could be recognized. The current trustees, please. They're probably all at one table. I'll turn the podium over to our Executive Director, Carrie Isaacson.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming today, and thank you, Craig. I'd also like to welcome you to the celebration of giving. This meeting is our yearly State of the Community Foundation. In addition to our annual report, a brand new annual report, fresh off the presses, and there should be copies here for you, and don't worry, we will also mail these out. I'm going to refer to this in some information that's on specific pages. So we want to make sure that we have as much information for you about the Community Foundation that you want. This period, as Craig said, ended last June 30, 2015. Gosh, we're so grateful that you all came today. I know there was a list as long as my arm of events going on and more going on tonight. I don't know how you're going to pick which ones to go to, but I'm very happy you came today. Maybe today you'll learn something new also about your community foundation. Now, in addition to our board members, our Summit Society members, and our founders, we also have people who are not board members, but they're active volunteers. And we have some former board members here. If you're on the committee, one of our committees, and you're a former board member, would you stand so we can say hi? Yeah, there you go. Thank you. Although this is a State of the Community Foundation, we're only going to touch on a few portions of our services and programs. We do a lot of things. The annual report lists all of our funds, grants, donors, and scholarship recipients for this period. And we do this every year. And as Craig said, today you'll hear from people that have experience with us in 4 different areas of our work. From a grant recipient, a donor advised fund, somebody who is, Jim, who is on our investment committee, and then Historic Fort Walla Walla, which has 4 agency funds with us. And an agency fund means a nonprofit has moved an endowment to us for our management. And we're very privileged to have about $7.5 million worth of nonprofit agency endowments at the Community Foundation. But before the guest speakers get going, and they are really the stars of this program and the most interesting, I'd like to share with you some of the progress we made last year. I'd also like to recognize one last group of people, very important people, and that's our staff. And they're in the back and they're already standing, so I don't have to ask them. You've got Casey Richards-Muller there in the white jacket. She's our donor services associate. You've got Leah Maldonado, who's our finance assistant, and Joan Consani, our director of finance. A great team. I want you to know that you have a very experienced and knowledgeable staff at the Community Foundation. A little bit about community foundations. Are all of you familiar with this kind of a nonprofit? Does everybody know what a community foundation is? Okay, very good, thank you. Well, there's 14 community foundations in the state of Washington, each dedicated to a specific geographic area. The only purpose of a community foundation is to serve as a neutral nonprofit where members of the community can make gifts. A local board will control, invest, and steward those gifts, and then share those resources with the community in perpetuity to improve the quality of life. That's the mission of a community foundation. We're not growing for the sake of growth. We're growing so that in the future generations here have the resources needed to solve problems and improve the quality of life. Many donors have built this community foundation over the past 31 years from $200,000 to $34 million. And you may be interested to know that our service area really is the Blue Mountain region. So Umatilla County in Oregon, Garfield, Columbia, and Walla Walla counties here in Washington. Our programs serve donors, nonprofits, people seeking scholarships, and the community at large. You can have an endowment at the Community Foundation that fits your specific goals as a donor. We have funds that support specific nonprofits like the Fort Walla Walla. We have endowments that support services for homeless people and for the arts. Those are called field of interest funds. We have scholarships that are as personal as the people for whom they are named. And we have scholarships that, when I learned the stories behind, the human stories behind a named scholarship, it's truly moving. We have funds that the donors have set up for the good of the community, but they've left it up to our board to pick the grantees each year. And those are discretionary grants. and many more than that. So what does it mean to be a neutral nonprofit, a neutral community foundation? That means that if you make a gift to us, one donor, you can support many, many nonprofits and many, many services in the area. Craig covered the accomplishments of the board in the last year in terms of governance and leadership. Let me, as executive director, focus on operations. Last year was my first full year as executive director. I came here in November of 2013. So last year, we received almost 1.6 million in gifts, grants, and bequests. Last year, we gave $1 million, over $1 million, to 425 organizations in those 4 counties. Last year, we created 8 new funds, bringing the total number of funds to 303. Each one has a separate donor, each one has a separate purpose. So those new funds are the Garfield County Hospital District Fund, the Stephen Moss Endowment Fund for BMAC, the Watts Endowment Fund for the Gem Theater in Athena, the Larson Family Fund, the Umapine Youth Fund, the Mary Jane Elward Memorial Scholarship Fund, the Dorothy Bjorklund Scholarship Fund, and the Phoenix Fund. And we thank these donors very much. We approved 2 applications for fiscal sponsorship last year, the famous pickleball project. Their Walla Walla Pickleball Association has raised an amazing amount of money. Oh, I haven't moved this. Thank you, Casey. Neutral. No wonder you're looking at me a little blankly. So there's the specific dollars. Here's the new funds. And I'll get to the other in a minute. But we can serve as a fiscal sponsor for non-profit organizations, for groups of people that have a charitable project, like the Pickleball Group. So the Pickleball Association picked us to help them serve the community and make the funding possible. So people were able to get a charitable deduction by making a gift to us for pickleball. They did all of the work. It's an amazing group of volunteers. All we did is kind of keep track of the money and then pay the contractors. And if you drive by Pioneer Park, you will see some beautiful pickleball courts. Another project we had was with the Pomeroy City Park project to replace playground equipment. And I just heard from PP&L that they're giving $1,500 for that project. Last year, we made 308 scholarships to 265 students in an amount of over $366,000. Last year, we awarded almost $269,000 in discretionary grants to 65 nonprofits. Last year, we re-granted $120,000 that we'd received from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Vista Hermosa Foundation, which is the charitable arm of Brochi Orchards. From those 2 groups, we re-granted about $120,000 to the community under the terms of those grants, mostly to alleviate poverty. And last year, I'm happy to say we came in 14% under our budget. So we actually only spent $382,000 because we were 14% under the budget, $382,000 to run the community foundation. Now people ask about the fees. Everyone who has an account with us, a fund with us, is assessed a fee. The fees range from a high of 1% to a low of 65 basis points, or 65% of 1%. And we do that so that we can support our operations. But I want to assure you that those fees, in terms of other community foundations, are very low. We're fortunate because our founders had a campaign to raise a sustaining endowment fund. And that sustaining endowment fund supports 18% of our operating budget. The fees support 74% of our operating budget, and the remainder comes from donations and grants like the Murdoch Trust out of Vancouver. So we're working hard to keep the costs low and to increase the amount of funds that come to us to support operations so we can keep those fees low. and we deeply appreciate anyone who gives us a contribution for our operations. Other progress last year was a new website. I skipped over that. A new website, a formal selection for an auditor, and we stuck with Cordell Nairher out of Wenatchee. A new IT system, which, as you know, is fundamental for any enterprise these days, which saves us $1,000 a month, and personnel policies. So to me, it was a good year. It was a good year in which we built a solid platform for future growth. For me, it's a joy, personally, to serve this community. It's a privilege to run the Community Foundation, because I get to work with you all. And now let me turn the program over to our first speaker, the dynamic duo of Donna and Joe Wujek. Why don't you come on? Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. So what's pickleball? I asked Jim Peterson, and he said you soak the ball in vinegar for 2 weeks. What is pickleball? I mean, I'm sorry. Is that the big?
Ping pong on a tennis court.
Okay.
Okay, big pat. Okay, all right. Because I learned something today. It's a good day. You play it with the wiffle ball?
Wiffle ball, a net that's 34 inches high.
I gotta play. This sounds great.
2 weeks, it'll be up and go up.
All right. Carrie asked us to talk about the donor-advised funds and our experience with Blue Mountain Foundation. And as we were reflecting on this, I thought, well, why do people give? And then I thought more specifically, why do we give? And you think about the word philanthropy. And philanthropy comes from Greek, and phil, love, anthropos, mankind, so love of mankind. And I thought that's why we give, but also we give because of love of place. And when Donna and I first came to the Walla Walla Valley, we were enamored with the beauty of the place, especially Donna, who is from an agricultural community. And we said, this is a place where we're going to live and be part of the community and raise our family, which we have. And it's been a wonderful 23 years. So, Walla Walla is a beautiful place, but as we got to know the community, we got to see that there are needs. And then we also got to meet people, had the privilege of meeting people who were serving those needs and those agencies that did the heavy lifting of helping those people with special needs in the community. And the list is too great to even talk about. But Don and I felt that we needed to give back to the community, and so in 2010, we got together with Lawson Knight and we developed a family charitable trust to be the vehicle to give back to the community. Just as an aside, poor Casey Moeller, the volunteer, it's very easy to do the donations now. You just go online. If you can remember your password, you can do it. And I've called Casey so many times, but then I thought, who cares? I don't care if anybody gets on, because whatever you give to is good. So maybe I'll just let somebody do it for me someday and just say, whatever you want to do, anything in the Valley, any of these nonprofits are fine. So Donna's going to talk a little bit about how we specifically use the vehicle to give back.
Well, we've always felt blessed and thought that using a family charitable trust through the BMCF was a great way to give back to the community. And it's quite easy, as Joe said, other than forgetting our password here and there. At first, we did donations on a fairly random basis, but we finally sat down and specified what we wanted to focus on in particular, and what would best serve the community in our feelings. So the issues that we decided to address are homelessness, mental health, women at risk, teens and adolescents at risk, and the land and open spaces, and education. And we feel that this vehicle has allowed us to be flexible and to give locally, and we hope that we can also educate our children, who we hope to pass this responsibility to our own children, to help them make those decisions also for this community.
That's it. Any questions that you have for us or about why we did it or how we do it? No? All right, Jim, you're up.
I don't know what you all know about donor-advised funds, but I came to share a little bit of information about how they work and how they meet my needs and Carol and my needs in donating. First of all, I'm really proud that we have community as the middle name of our organization, the Blue Mountain Community Foundation. I think that's very important, and it's here to serve our whole community and the communities that surround us. I worked at Walla Walla Community College for a long, long time. We took our middle name very seriously, and I know the foundation takes its middle name just as seriously. So what's the Blue Mountain Community Foundation need? They need funds for first step, I think. They need a capable staff, and surround that with trust, and you have a really viable organization that can serve as a neutral nonprofit in our community. I think I started something that worked kind of like a donor-advised fund before there was such a thing with the Blue Mountain Community Foundation. And I did it for a very real reason. I prefer to make donations of appreciated assets. Some of the smaller nonprofits in our community aren't accustomed to receiving appreciated assets. And when I made my donation in November and the recipient still wasn't sure where it was the following June, I decided something different needed to happen. So I went to Lawson and I said, Lawson, if I write a check to the Blue Mountain Community Foundation, will you distribute it to the recipients that I'd like to have my money go to? And he said yes, and I said, of course, I'll include a little bit for the foundation for that administrative fee. And that was before I had a donor-advised fund. I think it was before the foundation had a donor-advised fund. I don't know how to say this. I'm a selfish, generous person. I give to what makes me happy. And I think a lot of people who go around the country telling organizations how to raise funds, they said, find the things that make your donors happy and the money will come in. So I give to things that make me happy because I know that it's doing good work in our community. Last year, somebody stood up here and said the greatest thing in philanthropy is compounding interest. I think the greatest thing in philanthropy is the donor-advised fund, because I get to make every gift twice. I give it to the foundation, I file an IRS form, I get credit for a contribution, I can reduce my income taxes, I can feel good all about that. I actually give the money to the Blue Mountain Community Foundation, but I still have control over who really ends up with it. So I don't know my password either. I just go down to the office and and make my donations. But my contribution to my church comes out of that. Campfire, YWCA, Blue Mountain Land Trust, and others. And there's money there to address smaller donations that might come up during the year. So I get the joy of making a lump sum gift into the donor advised fund once a year, or every other year, or 2 or 3 times a year, as often as I care to. I tend to use appreciated assets. Our foundation knows exactly what to do with those. They get liquidated and checks sent out as directed on my requests. And that's where the trust comes in. I make a big donation to the foundation. I trust that our board will follow the recommendations that I make for giving that money away. And the minute you don't, doggone it, you're going to hear from me. So joy of giving and getting to feel that joy twice really is one of the things that I think is really cool about the Donor Advised Fund. It makes making gifts to our local agencies, nonprofits, and others easy, as you can do it online, you can show up at the office, you can write a letter. It's just real easy to make that gift. Talked a little bit about the tax advantages. To me, the tax advantage of the Donor Advised Fund is it's a vehicle that can receive appreciated assets. That's income that never shows up on my income tax, yet I can write it all off against regular income at tax time. And so that's, it seems that being able to do that in my case is huge. And I think it gives the smaller nonprofits greater access to a variety of donors in our community. People like myself who maybe aren't going to write a check can move money through the foundation to the smaller charitable organizations in town, and it gives them greater access to the funds. I looked in the program. There's 23 donor advised funds. There should be 123 or 223 or 323 the way this tool works for people who have some philanthropic bones in their body. It's just a great, great tool. People don't need to make a huge donation. It's not a $1 million endowment. It's not a $100,000 endowment. It's not a $50,000 endowment. It can be scaled to the size to meet the donor's wishes and needs, and it can work almost like a revolving fund to be added to and distributed at the donor's wishes. And I mentioned trust. I think that's just key. When you give the money to the foundation, you trust that they will direct it to the agencies that you ask them to, and that's never been a problem. One other point that I had is a donor advised fund can have a life beyond the physical life of the individuals that created it. Our fund has my daughter's name so that in the event I'm not around to make those directions to the foundation on where we want the funds to go, my daughters are named so they can do that. So it, in a way, meets some facets of estate planning as well. I see the mission is connecting people, charitable causes, and communities. And I think the Donor Advised Fund is just a great tool to accomplish that mission. So let's get 100 more of them by next year.
Good evening, I'm Stan Ludington. For the past 7 years, we have provided school-based health services at Lincoln High School at no cost to students. It's a wonderful opportunity. Recently, we're serving all of the students at Lincoln High School. This last year, we served 100% of the students there. Blue Ridge has been a new adventure for us, and a couple of years ago, we were invited to start providing services there, which we did. And then last year, the administration asked us if we couldn't start providing mental health services. We provide both medical services as well as mental health services to students that are students that are underserved who may fall through the cracks. So we scratched our heads trying to figure out how we could provide those services and went after getting some funds. And through the generosity of Blue Mountain Community Foundation, we received a grant that made it possible for us to leverage some other money with matching funds. So the money that we got from Blue Mountain Community Foundation turned into many times more than the amount that was given from Blue Mountain Community Foundation, which was wonderful. With those funds, we were able to hire some bilingual counselors that started providing services. And last school year, we went from 0 mental health services at the beginning of the school year to 150 visits each month at the end of the school year for students who probably would never get help with the issues and the needs that they have in their life. Two short stories. I only have a minute or two here. Erica tells me that she saw a fourth grade little girl last year for 10 sessions. She was having some trouble in class and having behavior problems. At the end of the 10 sessions, they felt like they were doing well, and she discharged this little girl. At the beginning of this school year, that little girl saw her in the hall and said, "Erica, I need to come and see you again." Well, this is a little girl whose mother works out of town who said, "I'm not really interested in counseling. I don't have time for it. And if you want to take care of it, Erica, go ahead." Erica didn't say anything to the little girl. She went home and talked to her mother and told her mother, "I want to get back into counseling." So the mother called our care coordinator and said, "Erica needs to make an appointment with my daughter. She wants to get back into counseling." And so she came back in, and she is a very happy little girl getting back into dealing with the issues that make her life hard and difficult. You know, it's interesting, at Blue Ridge, we have classrooms, and one child who has behavioral problems can hijack the whole classroom. The teacher's attention and the teacher's energy goes to dealing with those behavioral issues. So when we help one child, we are helping the whole class, increasing opportunities for them to learn and be in an environment that's not disruptive. Another service we provide is care coordination. 2 weeks ago, a little boy came in from the after-school program with a visibly fractured arm. His arm was distorted, and he was, of course, upside down with pain and with discomfort. A Hispanic little boy, Sonia, our care coordinator, who's also bilingual, called his mother, who does not speak English and works in fast food, and said, your son broke his arm, and she melted down. "I don't know what to do. I don't even know if I can get away from work." And so Sonia told her, "Just get away from work and come to Blue Ridge, and we'll have everything taken care of for you." Sonia called the doctor's office, told them the story, got the door open for the little boy. They were expecting the little boy. When the mother arrived, she had her paperwork ready from the little boy's chart and mapped to the doctor's office. The mother, who would not be able to navigate the system, knew exactly where to go. The little boy went and was taken care of, and his arm was treated. This would have ended up as an ER visit, much more expensive than getting this taken care of in the primary care setting. So we are really grateful that we can be a member of the community to help navigate the system for many of these families and these children who don't do well in the system. Erica talked to me yesterday and said, at the end of every session with a child, I ask them how they're doing and ask them to give me a word. This little boy said, 100. Next time she saw him, she again asked, "How are you doing?" He said, 1,000. And this last week she saw him and said, "How are you doing?" He said, 1,000,000. And she laughed and told me, "I am so grateful to be able to work and to provide services that help alleviate the burdens that a lot of these children live with in their troubled and unfortunate lives." So thank you, Blue Mountain Community Foundation, 1,000,000.
Hello, my name is James Payne. When Carrie asked me to speak, I was very quick to say yes. Anything I can do to help our fine community supporter and museum partner, I would be happy to do. Normally people don't ask me until they've been turned down 4 or 5 times. Carrie assured me that was not the case. It was 3 times. But today I'm going to talk about some of the partnership with the museum. I do want to say it's an honor to serve our community, and it's a privilege to be working at Fort Walla Walla Museum in a community that cherishes its heritage. That's a good place to be. And before I start, I want to talk about the fact that the Community Foundation has touched my life in a couple different ways. Through the museum, which we'll be covering, lots of different support there. And this last year, my eldest daughter was going off to college. She just started at the University of Washington. The only school on her list that did not provide merit scholarships unless you had financial need. So for middle-class families, you then have the burden of coming up with $100,000, per child for 2 kids. It's kind of tough. But thanks to Doug and Karen Bain and their family, the Bain Family Fund, we got some scholarships, some help on that. So that's much appreciated. Many families benefit from that. And as we all know, college is getting to be a more and more difficult challenge for families to face. Today I'm going to talk about agency funds. They're a great tool. I'm going to give an example of how it's fitting into our overall strategy of how to maintain what we're doing and how to grow. So you got that annual survival and you got that big picture of how you get to a higher level where this is important. And agency funds are a really easy way to have other people take care of your money for you. You've got experts that know how to invest and manage that money, and then you get a check. For a nonprofit, that's a wonderful gift, not having to have another group, another committee watching over that. We have a group of community experts hiring some really good financial folks, having good financial advisors on this that make sure good decisions are being made at the community level. So it's a fantastic tool for those organizations that have taken that as something that can help them out. Heritage is a thread that binds the fabric of a community together. Think about that. It's our past that kind of makes us who we are, and it brings us together. We see times in history where we get very cohesive. World War II. A day after the Japanese bombing at Pearl Harbor, our country came together. Everybody pitched in to win that war to keep our freedom. We have to thank all of those vets, and we're losing those people every day. But it's that heritage that kind of defines us, who we are as a family, as a community, as a nation. This is important stuff. Now, our mission at Fort Walla Walla Museum is the discovery, preservation, and sharing of the heritage of the Walla Walla region. It's an honor to have that task because we've got some pretty deep roots in this area. For over 100 years, the Walla Walla Valley has been known as the cradle of Northwest history. If you go to the State Museum in Tacoma, a majority of their exhibits on early Washington State history are Walla Walla stories. This is a key area, historic. And of course, before that history, we had thousands of years of Indian people living here, and they're still alive and doing well just a few miles down the road. They have another nice museum you can go and visit with Tumustlet Cultural Institute. I recommend that. One of the most significant things we do at the museum is connect children with their heritage. Whether the child is born here or their family has moved here, this is their community and they're part of this ongoing history, this ongoing heritage. With our wonderful volunteer docents, we're able to introduce those children to the stories of the past. When they see what kind of happened here, like, okay, I understand the region. That gives them a sense of belonging. They're part of this bigger thing. So our wonderful volunteers provide that. When the volunteers share stories about the contributions of children who grew up here, contributions, major accomplishments, these kids today say, well, you know what? Kids from our area do great things. I can do great things. That helps build self-esteem. If you've got that sense of belonging and that self-esteem, that can-do attitude, that is the basis for a solid community-minded citizen. We all have the responsibility of replacing ourselves. Those of us that are involved in helping the community, we got to make sure that next generation is there. And we have a lot of challenges today, fighting with cell phones, taking a lot of concentration away. All that time you spend doing the social media, you're not doing something else you used to do. And a lot of that is talking to your grandparents about family history. Your grandparents aren't going to text you a story. We've all seen examples where kids sit around a table and text one another. So we got to work together, as a community to make sure that we don't lose any of this heritage. And so that's a bit of a challenge. Another important issue is the cost of success, something that you don't often think about. In our community, heritage is placed as something of great value. There are families that have been around for many generations. We have a fantastic downtown with millions of dollars of investment to keep some of those old historic building fronts. We have a plethora of beautiful historic homes that people have heavily invested in to preserve. We have, of course, Fort Walla Walla Museum. In our nation, communities of this size have very few things as large as Fort Walla Walla Museum. That's because this community cherishes its heritage. So the investment has been substantial. Once again, it's an honor and privilege to work in that kind of environment. And the nice thing is the museum is a grassroots effort. Our community has done it. It's not the government, and actually it looks and feels different. It feels like a community museum. And our visitors that come from all 50 states and an average of 35 countries every year consistently say they really like the museum, they feel comfortable there. A lot of new museums are cold and sterile. Well, we're making sure we're keeping a grassroots local community museum with all the work that we do. Now, through strategic planning, a lot of hard work, our conservative values, with a lot of community support, the hardworking staff and volunteers have done some amazing things in recent years. Lots of things that are downright miraculous. Considering that we operate on average at 50 cents on the dollar of what a museum our size should have to be fully funded, adequately funded. We have half the staff we should have. We sometimes have to turn down artifact donations because we just simply don't have the resources to take on all that material. But we've had tremendous growth in the last a few decades. We've tripled our staff. Our annual fund drive has gone from 5,000 to over 40,000 a year. We've had growth in many areas. Our endowments went up threefold, and then recently they went up again. This is all good news. We build a new building. All these great things happen. The cost of success is when people see these great things, there can be a misconception that you have no financial needs. You're loaded with money. Well, we've worked hard to get what we have for our community, and we need to keep working, both as the team out there and the community, to keep things going. We recently received wonderful news from the estate of Olive and Adrian Price. And I think most of you have heard that news. The Prices made a gift to, or are in the process of making a gift. It's going through the Baker Boyer Bank right now. A gift of $550,000 to start an endowment to support Fort Walla Walla Museum, an identical gift to support our friends at the Blue Mountain Humane Society. Now that is a pretty touching thing. I think I met the Prices a couple of times. I can't say that I had any development input on that decision. One of my jobs I'm supposed to be doing, that I had a few conversations. But what makes me feel good is that they valued what we were doing, and they must have thought we were doing a pretty good job of it to decide to make a gift at that level. Now that's the type of vote of confidence that can really pick you up on a bad day. And I think when Carrie called to give me the news, it was one of those tough days, but then I was flying high for the next week that yes, there are people out there, I know there's others out there that are doing things as well, but there are people out there that think our mission is of value to the community to the point that they will make a substantial gift to keep things going. However, when people heard about that gift, a lot of folks don't understand what an endowment is. First person came up to me, oh, you can build that next structure now. Someone else wanted their pet project done with this new money, and we have to explain to the community what endowments are. We don't own the endowment. Our friends at the Community Foundation own the endowment, and it exists to provide operating revenue forever for us. That doesn't mean we have $500,000 to go out and start construction on something. So we've got a little bit of work to do in our community so that people understand that. And there are different types of gifts. That gift that goes forever is a very important gift. Now, forever, the cost of forever. For museums, I actually just did a little column in the Union Bulletin on that. Once again, trying to educate people on what it is we do and what our challenges are. We're the primary custodians of our region's heritage. A lot of that is artifacts. We have the fastest growing collection in the last decade with over 1,000 pieces added per year. That presents a challenge. It costs on average $25 per item to catalog and process it into the collection. So there's an expense. It costs about $150,000 a year to properly care for these materials. As I said, occasionally we don't have the resources. We have to turn down some artifacts that otherwise we might take on that we can use to help tell future stories. Exhibits cost a lot of money. Programs are expensive. Infrastructure, we all know these things, are expensive. So you put that all together, and it's a challenge. Now, we've also been told that we have the most active public programming of any museum in the state. Just 2 of our programs, Living History Museum After Hours, are over 60 programs a year, just there. So we're trying to do a lot. We're trying to do a lot. We need $1 million a year to operate. We have $500,000 a year for our budget. So we still need support. We have a diverse revenue stream. We have membership, visitation, other programming, store sales, gifts, grants, and endowments. So we bring in money from a lot of different ways. And in the end, we've got some challenges with September the 11th, tourism goes down, recession, support for all nonprofits goes down, so times are tough. We've come up with new ways to increase revenues, new programming. We started an archaeology division that earns money doing programs for the community. When the government requires work to be done, we can do that work. For 5 years, we actually were able to make some money on that, but there's few projects, they're variable in size. This year, we're actually not making the money we need to in the archaeology. We've done a lot of different things. As a museum, in addition to providing cultural services for the community, we also have the separate hat of being an economic engine. Through tourism, we know that a lot of money comes into our community. There was a study done by Tourism Walla Walla several years ago that showed that visitors to Fort Walla Walla Museum that are from out of the county, was how they defined a tourist, spend $206 a piece, man, woman, and child, in our community. Multiply that out, that's $2.2 to $2.5 million a year. Those dollars come into our community. They help out lots of other businesses and lots of families. So we need to do a better job of making sure that tourism businesses know they're already making money because we exist. And one of our efforts is to educate these businesses and say, we need more support. You're making money because of us. We need some support from you to keep going and to build up so we can bring in even more money to you. Now, we have 4 separate funds which are part of our long-term solution, our long-term stability. Our agency funds. And that's part of the solution. For nonprofits, having a good solid endowment is what keeps you going on an annual basis into the future. We have our Friends of Fort Walla Walla Museum Fund. Anybody can be a friend and can contribute money to that. We have an endowment for a building as a model. You can endow any building you want out there. The Italian Farmstead or Saturno Farmstead has an endowment. We have a part of our collection taken care of with the Mary Mayberry Orchard Fund. The nursing heritage of the Walla Walla Valley is being cared for with that, and we keep getting additions to these funds every year. We could also have an endowment if somebody wanted to endow the bookkeeper or the grounds manager or something like that. We've got all these different tools that we could partner with the Community Foundation to help this go. One of the more exciting recent things we did with the partnership is we started the Fort Walla Walla Museum Building Reserve Fund as a short-term agency fund that allows us to actually earn some money. We had all the money in the bank. We were earning 0.2% a year. We weren't going anywhere. Moving over a chunk of money to the foundation, we're now actually getting back to where that's growing in addition to what we put into it. And that's going to be there for those long-term needs. We've got a lot of stuff that we need to do. So just in closing, museums are forever, and the agency funds are important tools to keep us going. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jim Hayner. I'm a member of the investment committee. We have the great honor and distinct obligation to take the money, as James is talking about, and invest it in a wise way so that it grows over time. The members of the investment committee work hard. We meet periodically. The names are in your book. You know all of them. Quickly, Anne-Marie Zell-Shireen, Peter Harvey, Lloyd Baker, Kevin Michelson, Mark Sherry, and myself. That's the committee. But we don't do this alone. Some years ago, the trustees decided that it would be helpful to have outside consultation of a national level to help the committee make investment decisions. And so they hired FEG, which is Fund Valuation Group. Fund Valuation Group helps community foundations and nonprofits across the country with investment decisions. And so the investment committee meets with that group, with FEG, on a quarterly basis, and they help us with issues about the economy, investment vehicles, strategies, and helps the committee monitor the performance of our investments. So how are the investments viewed by the investment committee? Well, first of all, we take a very long view of the investments, a view in terms of perpetuity. This is different, of course, than what we might view for an individual. So if I've set aside a reserve fund, a fund that I've set aside personally because I'm going to build a new garage, I want those funds invested so that when I use them next year, I will have the same amount that I have today. So I invest them very conservatively. For a long-term view is much different than that. And we use investment vehicles that take a very long-term view. Why do we do this, and what is the view? Well, first of all, the investment committee goal is to provide a long-term benefit for the community and to maintain the buying power of the funds in the endowment. Well, what does that mean? If you think of the endowment, there are money flowing into the endowment and there's money flowing out of the endowment. Over time, the goal of the investment committee is to maintain the buying power. We know, first of all, that the trustees have an investment utilization policy, which means that of the endowment, every year 4.5% of that average endowment is given away to the community every year. So that's given away in scholarships and discretionary funds and directed funds, those kinds of things, 4.5%. So in addition, we know that there's inflation. There has been. Luckily, the last few years, inflation's been lower, but some of us are old enough to remember the 80s when it was pretty darn high. In addition, there are costs, the cost to run the foundation. So, for example, let's say that there's 4.5% that's given out to the community. There's 1.5%, let's say, to operate. And let's say that there's 2% inflation. If you add those things up, 8%. In today's market, it's not easy to make an 8% return year in and year out. If you know what the interest rates have been, you know how difficult that is. Well, that's the goal, and that's the obligation of our committee, is to try to reach that percentage. Well, how do we do that? Well, first of all, the committee utilizes FEG and utilizes different investment vehicles to try to reach that goal. See if I can get to a slide here. I'll go this way. How about if I go this way? You might, hopefully you can read that, maybe you can't. But these are the investment classes that we use to invest. And we determine in each class there is a maximum and a minimum and a target. And those are, if you can look, the big categories, there's global equity, fixed income, real assets, diversifying strategy, and cash. And so those are the big assets. In those, there are smaller categories as well. For example, under global equities, there's U.S. large cap, U.S. small cap, there are developing nations, there are emerging markets. So all of these are utilized to try to diversify the portfolio. Why do we want to diversify the portfolio? It's because that different asset classes act differently. So we try to invest so that not all of the assets classes act the same way. Fixed income bonds don't act the same way as U.S. large capitalization companies. Emerging markets don't act the same way as real estate. So the idea is to diversify the investments so that when one asset class does well, That's great, and maybe that'll hold up an asset class that doesn't do quite so well. We know that this is difficult because sometimes asset classes don't do well. How many follow the stock market? If you're following the stock market in 2015, you're probably not extremely happy, right? U.S. stocks in 2015 had generally gone down. The Dow Jones average is down, S&P is down, Russell 2000 is down, okay? There are asset classes that are actually up in 2015. And so the idea is to offset some of those classes when some are up, some are down. We can't always do that. In 2008 and 2009, every asset class was down. And they weren't down a little bit. If you look in the far right-hand columns of this, this will show you how the investment endowment has grown. And the second last column is the investment returns. You will see two big red numbers in there. 2008, there was a red number of $7,500,000 loss. That's 28% of the endowment. And you know what? That wasn't as bad as many endowments. We actually did pretty darn well that year because many endowments were down a third and 40%. The idea, however, is to over time to change that. Well, if you look in 2010, 9 and 10, they were up years. 2011 was a slight down year. 12, 13, 14, 15 were all up years. The point of the graph is to show you that by continuing with a long-term investment profile, what happened between 2008 and 2015 was actually a big increase in the endowment. Now, that was due to a variety of factors, and that included inflow of money to the endowment by generous donors, but it was a large part by the long-term investment decisions that are made by the committee. So this is an important area. It's important for your funds. It's important for all of us. Luckily, over time, the committee, with a lot of help, has done pretty well. Just to give you some numbers, the last 5 years, we'd averaged 9.1%. So if you'd had all that money just in cash, you would have made about 0.1%. So the last 3 years, 8.6%. If we go back 7 years, which picks up some of those bad years, we still pick up from 2008 a 5% annualized return, even including 2008. So we're pretty proud of that performance over time. It takes a lot of hard work, it takes a lot of advice, and it takes a long-term perspective. In 2008, I will tell you that I was one of the most nervous people on the endowment committee. I was the chair of the endowment committee. And I sat with fund evaluation members in April of 2009. The Dow Jones average was $5,600, and I thought it was going to 4,000. 5,600. It had been 11,000. I was one nervous chairperson. And you know what? Other members, including Lloyd Baker and Peter Harvey and others, said, remember our long-term objective. This is not this year, it's a long-term objective. And the worst thing we can do is knee-jerk reaction. You must stay invested, you must do it wisely. We did that, it paid off. It wasn't because of my decision. So the investment committee works hard. We enjoy the fact that the endowment continues to grow. By the way, just to correlate, the last number you see in my bottom column is 32 million. Kerry said there's 34 million. There actually is. There's $1.5 million that's actually invested, given to the foundation, with the foundation as the beneficiary that's actually invested with other entities. So that's how you get to the $34 million. But $34 million, that's an increase from 2004 of over double. So your committee, investment committee, is working hard for you. Thank you.
So you all have heard a lot of big words, things about endowments and things that last forever, things that go on in perpetuity. So I have 9 years worth of stories to share with you about Craig Sievertson. Actually, I told Craig that earlier, and he said, your story should have a beginning, and it should have an end, and they should be very close together. So, what I'm here to tell you about is we'd like to thank Craig for his service to the Community Foundation and his time that he served on the board, which has been 9 years. For the last 2 years, he's been our board president, and he came into that role right as Carrie Isaacson was taking over as executive director. And she was new to the community, new to the foundation. She was starting over with a brand new staff, and we were sort of reinventing ourselves. And Craig said, how can I help you? And she said, I would really like to maybe meet with you periodically outside of the board and outside of the executive committee just to sort of get the lay of the land. And so for the last 2 years, on every Tuesday morning, those two have gotten together and had a meeting to help her find her way and to help lay the groundwork for the work we've done with the foundation in the last couple of years. Craig has been a very valuable leader. He's led us through redefining our vision, our mission, our values. We've been so very blessed to have him as a leader in our community and in this organization. And it's with great pleasure that we recognize his efforts and present him with a plaque thanking him for his leadership with the Blue Mountain Community Foundation. And there's a plaque under here. I found it. My stories.
Thank you, Shannon, for two things, the very kind words, very much appreciated, and not sharing 9 years worth of stories. You know, the meetings that Shannon mentioned that Carrie and I have had have been so enjoyable and hopefully not too damaging to Carrie's experiences here. But nonetheless, Carrie is really an incredible person. And these 2 years that I've been privileged to serve as president of the board have been extremely rewarding. I'm very humbled to not only have worked with Carrie over these last 2 years, but also have been entrusted as a board member for the last 9 years of this wonderful organization that began 31 years ago with these founders that are here today. So thank you very much. I also want to thank you all for coming. It seems to be growing every year, and that's really, really exciting to see. Jim Peterson, I think we've got a potential marketing committee member. They're trying to drive more donor advised funds, so thank you for that. And the word of trust is very important, and we trust that you will also continue to be there for us, so thank you for that. I guess I would also like to recognize, and I saw it's in fine print on the part that I saw the program out as you entered this evening, the program this evening, there was some fine musicians there, an organization called Switchgrass, and I don't know if they are still here. Are any of the artists still here today? But thank you to Switchgrass for coming. I believe they're from Waitsburg, so thank you for coming. And your centerpieces there are from the Walla Walla High School FFA program, so thank you for that as well. I guess outside of that, thank you all very much. Thank you also to the other Board of Trustees and your support and past as well. Thank you, and until next year.